There's the proximity search, and then there's a bound search, and you can do either a bounding box or a center point and a radius. But the proximity search works kind of funny, especially on small data sets, because it defaults to giving you a limit of 100, and it's going to give you the 100 closest things to whatever point you specify, even if everything is nowhere near that point. So what we can start by doing is just say, okay, give me a limit of 2. And that should always give us this one. Actually, we'll just say limit 1. And it should definitely give us this one here. And nothing at the beach. Okay, so there we go. But then if I were to say St. John, USVI. Ooh, that's not right.
I think you mistyped it.
Oh?
Because it didn't autocomplete.
Oh, huh.
Yeah, you put a period last time.
Yeah, well, let's see, let's find out what the coordinates are. Yeah, well, the coordinates look right. I wonder if, actually, let's find out here. So now we get to see some live debugging. So first I'm just going to make sure that all the photos do in fact have geocoordinate data. And let's see, it looks like try to make this a little bit easier to read. So yeah, it's looking like one of the images is actually missing geocoordinate data, which makes sense because we uploaded it before implementing that. So what I'm actually going to do is just blow away the entire database. Say here's where fs.files, that's where our files are actually stored, and that's completely impossible to read. But because Mongo documents are limited to 4 megabytes, what it actually does is splits off the chunks of files into a collection, conveniently named chunks. So we're just going to take that and drop it, drop database. Okay, so now we are working from a clean data set. No more anything. So we'll go back and add a couple photos. See what we got here. Here's something from San Francisco. Okay, so here's one of San Francisco, and then we'll add another one. We'll add the Tribeca one again, which is right here. Okay, so we got one for New York. Oh, here's an, might be hard to see. Scott is making friends. This is probably my favorite photo of the bunch. Oh, it's kind of hard to see.
Yeah, it's kind of impossible to see.
Yeah, JPEG. There we go. This is, oh yeah, no, that's not happening at all. Oh well, the joke is lost.
From this side.
The joke is lost on you people. Sorry about that. Okay, so we'll add one more here. This is my friend Paul with a funny hat. In Montreal. Okay, and we have, oh yeah, that's completely unseeable. Sorry about that.
Want to shut off the lights?
It's not really worth it. Paul's not that attractive. It's okay, he won't watch this. So we've got our 4 different photos in our 4 different locations, and they all should be geotagged. So if we try New York again, we should get the Tribeca Film Festival, right? If we try San Francisco, California, we get the San Francisco one. All right, and Dallas, Texas, all right, and Scott is making friends in Dallas, Texas. So yeah, that's the gist of how the location-aware searching works. Like I said, with really small data sets, it can kind of lead to some wonky results, so you might have to either filter it manually or use bounding box searches. What we actually did for our application at work is we have a little Google map where you basically draw a rectangle, and the plugin will translate those coordinates into a bounding box that MongoDB understands. And it basically looks like, so instead of having one coordinate, it would be like an array of coordinates. I think it's like lower right or lower left and upper right or something like that. So it would be, you know, another coordinate, and then you would say within. And I think it defaults to box, but you can tell it to do radius search also. And that's basically it. So in, you know, 50 lines of controller code, 36 lines of model code, and again, most of this stuff is generated in some templates. We have a functioning photo blog with tags and location search and all that good stuff. So any questions on anything we've seen so far? So I've all just wowed you into a dumbfounded state where you just don't know what to do with yourself?
That's what we're doing.
I got a
Yes.
Does Lithium let you do Mongo authentication?
Mongo authentication?
Yeah.
Oh, like just database username and password?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just
for database or only the admin one?
no, any of them. It's just you go to your configuration and you just say login is whatever and password is whatever. Just same as you register any other database connection.
Could you bring up maybe the Bootstrap PHP file, maybe the route?
Yeah. So okay, the Bootstrap is really basic. All you're doing is defining some constants for where your application is and where to look for libraries, and you're just loading a bunch of other Bootstrap files. The routes file is one that's probably going to be a little bit more interesting.
Well, what I'm wondering is, probably for both, but I guess Bootstrap in particular, what I'm wondering is if it would be feasible to actually, I'm sorry, could you just bring that up one more time?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Just go back. Okay.
Just to make a point, namely that it looks like most of the actions in that file is simply requiring certain directories.
Yeah, it's really just requiring other files. This is just an organizational convention.
Well, I wonder if it would be feasible to actually have a Mongo database, which would, you know, take something like the list of directories that we need for a particular application and have some sort of code that could generate that file from Mongo database.
I'm not sure I follow.
Well, for example, I mean, whatever structure you need for a particular web application, for example, the list of directories to be required in this particular file, and perhaps a particular routes. I mean, maybe I'm thinking too much by analogy, but I've worked with WS widgets in C++.
Okay.
And the same idea of actually having a database to sort of specify the connections, like the event and the handlers that you want to invoke, or in the case of a web application, the actions that you want to invoke.
Oh, so creating almost like an application template?
Yeah, inside a Mongo database, and then generating a lot of this code from the database, just because potentially if you wanted to port it to another platform, or if you wanted to build a similar application to another platform, if you had a database that could generate code for several different frameworks. Or if nothing else, to communicate to outsiders that this is what it looks like, you know, what the application framework looks like.
And that was kind of my root question. You were saying, do you do everything in the database? Is that what you mean, that you'd actually literally do everything in the database? It's the same question.
Well, everything is kind of a broad question.
I know, but
no, I mean, I don't really think it's feasible, nor do I see the point of trying to do, unless you're doing something like Couch App, where Couch is actually designed, where Couch App rather is designed to kind of be self-contained, and you can write your entire application in JavaScript, and that's kind of a method for reusability and like really easy portability. but there's nothing about that that would make it conducive to kind of clicking a button and generating your application in like C# or whatever. Like that level of code generation, I just really don't see the value in, because you end up, in the most extreme cases, you end up with thousands of lines of generated code off of a small amount of configuration. Well, most of that generated code, you don't see it. You have no idea what it does, and you have no idea how to debug it when something goes wrong, and something invariably will go wrong.
Well, sure. I mean, I get that point. On the other hand, when you have code which is basically a list of something, either conceptually an array of something or a map of something.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find that using code generation can be helpful, because you can actually visualize what the list of, it's easier to visualize when it.
Well, what's the advantage of stashing this stuff that you're
Yeah.
talking about in the database per se? I mean, you're talking about generating this file, but it could be done from an array in code too.
Yeah, what we actually did is PHP 5.3 has this new feature called far archives, where it's similar to like jar archives for Java or whatever, where it's basically a bunch of PHP files tarred up in a little ball. We just extract it into a default application, and you can build your own templates that are customized to whatever your needs are. But yeah, I mean, this is like the very, very base level application bootstrap. So like here we're requiring the file that defines the database connection. So you end up in kind of a catch-22 there anyway if you try to do it from a database. So for the really, really base level stuff like this, I just wouldn't really see the value in doing that in a database. In like a higher level content management framework, if you want to be able to specify certain rules and certain software interconnectivities through database configuration, absolutely. At that level, yeah, that might make a ton of sense. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I actually wasn't thinking in terms of actually of generating it while it's running. I just meant that the source code files itself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, we use far archives for that. I mean, yeah, if you want to have your own kind of like JSON or XML meta configuration with some kind of build system behind it, sure, that would at least meet your goal, I guess, of language agnosticism.
Just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's about all I got on that. Any other questions about this or anything else? Are you all going to go out and build like super awesome Mongo applications now?
I'm curious. How long has Lithium been? I know nothing about Lithium.
Okay.
Last summer I worked at PHP was 8 years ago. So.
Well, I can't really blame you.
Yeah.
Yeah, PHP is like finally starting to get good. Like, no offense to anyone who's out there listening to this, but
No, that's what I thought.
If you use PHP and think it's a well-designed language,
like,
you have no problem.
I've used PHP like predominantly for years, and like I'm actually starting to really like it now. Yeah, so myself and Joel Paris, who co-founded Lithium with me, and a couple other guys who aren't here, we were originally the developers of Cake PHP. And about 2 years ago, I basically downloaded the source tarball for PHP 5.3 beta, and just kind of started messing around just to see what I could do, and wrote a few test scripts just to kind of take some of the ideas that we're doing in Cake and reimagine them with new features, clean slate architecture. And 2 years later, here we are.
Right. Are you guys differentiated in the field of sort of application frameworks?
You mean of the like 85 different frameworks?
Yeah, why yet another PHP framework? Well, yeah, we basically took kind of all the lessons we had learned from developing like a really popular high adoption framework. So all the lessons from that and all the advances inherent in 5.3, and the advances are like closures and anonymous functions alone. Just puts it like leaps and bounds, because functional programming is actually now possible in PHP. So just taking all that stuff and being able to say, especially because when we started out, there was nothing anywhere like this.
Something we didn't show in here is
Yeah.
we actually built an aspect-oriented programming layer, like out of some
relatively basic constructs.
Yeah.
So you can do aspect-oriented programming.
How many people
style
are
things here.
familiar with aspect-oriented design, at least peripherally? It basically says you can take what are called aspects. You think of like security, authentication, logging, caching, all that kind of stuff, which has absolutely nothing to do with your domain whatsoever, but you still have all this code that you have to sprinkle throughout your application that really is its own separate concern. So what we did with Lithium is we used concepts of functional programming to actually build an aspect-oriented system where you can just say in one, I don't know if we have any, actually action's probably a good example.
Yeah, I think that's
So in action we have a filter that's being applied to the dispatcher. So over here in index.php where we're dispatching the request, this method is, the implementation inside it is made filterable, and that really only takes like 3 lines of code to implement. And what it allows is this over here where we're actually applying a filter to the method which gets invoked when the method is run. So right here, before the dispatcher run method itself is called, this thing gets hit. And this does a couple of things. First of all, it takes the request object out of the parameters. So we're actually getting, first of all, the fully namespace name of the dispatcher class. So if you have one filter that you're applying to multiple classes, you actually get the class here. You get all of the parameters that the method is accepting. And you also get this chain object, which is basically a monad in functional programming terms. It's just a string of closures that get executed one after the other. So here we're intercepting the method and grabbing the request and using that to actually determine what environment we're running in, whether it's production, test, whatever. And then we're actually using this to load all the routes in not only the application itself, but any other plugins or libraries that are registered. And whereas normally this would be kind of like a hard-coded dependency buried within the framework somewhere, we're actually pushing it directly out into userland code. So if you don't want to have routes loaded the way that the framework normally does it, it's right there in a bootstrap file and you can go mess with it.
okay. This comes in really handy when you want to stuff like caching or logging,
Yeah.
which have, that you end up having to do explicit dependencies between them as soon as you, you declare, you create your model and you say, okay, I want to cache these results and whatnot. And really, the caching has nothing to do with the logic. You're adding that on because you need caching because that's hit quite often. So you can actually put them completely out in a, and this is a plain file. It's not in a class. It's in the bootstrap process, so it gets loaded before that actual class, before the, let's say, the find on the model is run. So it knows that this behavior is needed, and you can say, hey, I'd like to filter the find method on this specific model call, and I want to check my cache first.
Such that it's cached.
Yeah. If it's not there, then actually call the model, and you can do write through, read through, whatever kind of caching you want to be able to do through find or save. But the thing is, like, you can blow this file away. Like, you could blow up this whole filter, and your application will still work.
Right.
Because you're separated the concerns of
Right.
of your
login
domain
stops
and
working, or your
and
caching
like
stops working.
Right.
Yeah.
So which is awesome because
Every function call, you have this hooking ability?
not
every function call, but
because PHP doesn't have
How do
any
you
kind of
specify a
preprocessor.
function
Right,
if you're
there's no
allowed to
decoration.
hook a function or not? How's that?
So in the documentation, we add a little tag, like basically a reflection tag that we can.
it just
that we
looks
use
like
so you can
this,
see.
and it shows up in the documentation, and we actually have.
Okay, so if it's tagged that
Yeah.
means you get interrupted and.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we can't allow everything because there's no preprocessor in PHP. Like you can get certain things that will allow you to like hook in preprocessor, but they're not the kind of thing you want to do in a production site. So it's a little bit of like it's something that it's kind of like hacked on, but it's quite.
It's hacked
easy
on
to
in a
do.
really elegant way.
Yeah,
I mean,
making
or
a
as
method
elegant as you
filterable
can
is
get.
making any method filterable, but basically allowing you to act on it in an aspect-oriented way is 3 lines of code.
Yeah.
The really cool thing is if you're writing debugging tools, like I actually started writing almost like a dtrace for Lithium, where the framework itself has introspection tools where you can go and look at all the methods and all the classes and figure out what's filterable, apply filters to everything, and just aggregate all the data in your entire application to like some log, say for example MongoDB, and then you can go do analysis on like one particular request and figure out what happens. it would be a horrible idea for like performance analysis. There are better tools for that, but for like hardcore debugging, yeah, it's really, really awesome. The other clear advantage is that instead of having like caching or logging sprinkled out throughout your entire application, you have your entire cache or logging strategy in one file, and you can hook it everywhere in your application.
So if you want to tweak something in just one place, you don't have to.
Yeah.
If we got a large application with highly interdependent, interconnected things, then you might not know where at what level this is being cached at. So you can go and check out. Oh yeah, this is my cache config. Scroll through. That's the line I want.
So that's the gist.
Is there
We think so.
Is there a site that this framework's being directly applied to and was kind of developed under the mantra of?
Analog.
Yeah.
Okay, a little bit of a heretical thing right here, but this site was actually just featured in the Couch.io blog.
Oh yeah.
So CouchDB, kind of like another document-oriented database. So there's one of the guys who helps develop the framework developed this because he was getting tired of any kind of like chat program IRC. He wanted basic IRC, but for people who don't know what IRC is. And so he said, I'm going to try and build something. He built it out of Lithium, and this was actually just featured in the CouchDB like official blog as like a really good case study in using document-oriented databases. And just so happened that he built the whole thing with Lithium as well, which since we support document-oriented databases as first-class citizens, like the support for them was written before everything else. Our MySQL support isn't even like done yet.
Yeah. So we actually have we have native support for Mongo Couch. MySQL, although it's not full featured, and we're just about to drop a Cassandra database adapter. So we've pretty much got the non-relational circuit covered.
Open up one of the chats. Like since we're showing this
Why
up.
are you dropping Cassandra?
Give me a URL. What's that?
Why are you dropping Cassandra?
No, we're adding Cassandra.
Oh, you're adding.
Yeah, we're
As in
dropping the
plugin.
code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paste me the ID and I'll
you want me to do it?
yeah, connect to it and paste me the ID.
While we're talking about heresy, do you have Postgres support?
Not
I think someone
yet.
was working on it. Like we have SQL Server, someone's been working on it. I don't think it's very. I don't think it's been touched in a little bit of a while, but the code's there and everything. And Postgres would just be another flavor of SQL, so it's really just changing around some of the different field escape sequences and whatnot for some of the internal method calls.
This is really slow.
Do the MS SQL, the Postgres, the MS SQL driver, to that take advantage of the fact that Microsoft SQL is like a real SQL database?
Yeah, it uses the new SQL Server 2008.
But does it use like foreign keys and triggers and whatever?
Yeah, it uses.
Oh yeah, so if you
I don't
want to
know
check
what
out
you
the
mean.
framework, you can
I
go
don't
to
know, can you like if I'm using Lithium, can I go and I'm using the Microsoft SQL driver, can I put a trigger in my database, or can I sit there and define it with like a check constraint or whatever?
Not in the code yet. I don't think we don't. There's no code yet for triggers.
Yeah, we probably won't add support for triggers.
So you're going to keep with that kind of everything in the app level model?
Well, I mean, there's nothing preventing someone from
No.
extending the driver. Like the pretty much anything that you see in this framework, you can override yourself at runtime.
Yeah.
And then, like the way the service locator works and finding classes and whatnot, if you don't like, let's say, how our request object works, then you can drop in your own because it's more optimized for what you're doing and whatnot. The same thing for pretty much everything else. If you don't like our database driver, then it's relatively easy to just add your own and then add in your own custom functionality.
Yeah, like there's already a really great database abstraction layer for PHP in Doctrine 2. Doctrine 2 is super awesome for doing relational stuff, and if you want to swap out our database stuff for theirs, go for it. We totally support that. We have really good support for most like standards conformant PHP libraries.
We also have a plugin too that will basically allow you to query stuff using the Lithium-esque syntax, like the DSL, and still use Doctrine in the back end, so you get all the nice features that it provides.
So you really get the benefits of both.
When you say about native Mongo support, does that mean that you have have in memory a Mongo client connection variable, or it's easy to create one, or?
Oh, you can get the connection object anytime
Yeah.
you want. You can drop down to like actually query the Mongo, like the actual Mongo classes that are exported by the extension.
Right.
So the PHP driver is just there for you to use. You don't have to go through any configuration. permission.
Yeah,
for
well,
any,
you just have to access it like you do a
Well-
connection get. You get the default connection that returns to an object that you can, that is the Mongo object.
We have a class that exposes the Mongo data through our interface, like models and everything. So our adapter allows you to interface your models with Lithium or Mongo collections.
So you wouldn't
but-
often be calling functions on a Mongo connection directly? Or at all?
No, well you can. We still, like Joel was saying, we still expose the connection object, so if you want to go straight into Mongo and deal directly with it to call some methods, you can totally do that. But by default, we wrap everything for you and just make it really easy to just interact with your models and not have to worry about the underlying database.
What about like queries that would involve embedded JavaScript? Could you substitute them with embedded PHP or something like that? Like,
Yeah, actually, it'll let you, I believe. What would be a good example here?
Embedded JavaScript, like a where clause.
Yeah, so I could say, I could actually do photo all conditions equals some function, and just say function, you know, return this dot foo bar, and this will automatically be translated into a MongoDB where clause. So that's all.
PHP code will be translated into a
Oh no,
Java
this isn't. This is
script.
just a string. This is just a string that contains a JavaScript function.
So there'd be no way to say, if you wanted to write a Mongo query involving some JavaScript,
Mhm.
you'd have to. How would you do that? Would you?
Well, this is it, because
Okay, so it would
there's
just
your
be-
there's your string of JavaScript that gets automatically translated into actual JavaScript on the back end.
All right. So you'd have to embed it as a sort of a string literal for the purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, get converted to a Mongo code object.
Yeah.
How does
One.
Lithium know that's a function to be translated as a, is it just 'cause it's not a
Because it
string?
starts with the word function and it has parentheses after it.
So it's just a string match?
Yeah, it's really simple. And you can actually pass in like a native Mongo code object with the code embedded or whatever you want to do. And like another thing that's kind of cool is you can say, let's say I want to do a match against the title. I can actually say title like the actual SQL command like, and actually give it a regex like this, and it will actually convert it to a Mongo regex object. So you're still using, actually this is another thing that the adapter provides, is you can do stuff like, you know, less than 10. I don't know why you would do title less than 10. But yeah, whereas normally this would be like LT, we actually provide an abstraction. Like let's say you're writing a plugin that you actually want to be cross-functional across like MySQL and MongoDB. Our interface provides that stuff. So yeah. And it also makes it easy for people who are just coming to Mongo from relational databases and that kind of thing.